Who's going to kick it off today?
So I'm told. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon here in the Red Room. I'm Kenneth Adams, President and CEO of Empire State Development. I would like to thank all the chambers of commerce and business organizations from across New York for being with us here this afternoon. All of your organizations are excited to participate with us in Governor Cuomo's new tax-free New York initiative, and we thank you for that. This proposal uses our world-class higher education institutions to attract businesses to struggling communities all across the state. These business leaders here today, chambers of commerce, representatives of business organizations, know that this is how we're going to revitalize the upstate economy, help businesses grow and stay here in New York, and create jobs. In just a moment, you're going to hear from Governor Cuomo, Budget Director Bob Megna, Brian McMahon, Executive Director of the New York State Economic Development Council, Gary Douglas, the Plattsburgh North Country Chamber of Commerce, Barbara Ann Hegan, the Otsego County Chamber of Commerce, and Al Samuels, who's the President of the Rockland Business Association. Thank you again for joining us. I'm now pleased to turn it over to Governor Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First, thank you for coming on relatively short notice. But it's an important topic, and time is getting short here in Albany. We have a few weeks left. Albany, its legislative session is sort of hurry up and wait. You know, the session goes on for approximately 6 months, but everything either happens or not in the last week or so of the legislative session. So we're coming down to it, so it's a critical period. And we have what I consider a very exciting economic development program that we are proposing and we want seriously considered. And I want to make sure that it's intelligently and accurately communicated, because I think it has tremendous potential for the state. I spent a great deal of my life at one time working in economic development. I was the HUD Secretary, Housing and Urban Development. I was the Assistant Secretary before I was the HUD Secretary. Everyone thinks of HUD as housing, and it is the nation's #1 houser. It's also the #1 economic development agency. So I spent a lot of time, 8 years, doing economic development all across the country. And I remember thinking sometimes, you know, what am I going to do with this in my life? Actually, it now becomes relevant. But HUD ran the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG program, which is probably the largest economic development program in the country. We then ran and started something called the Economic Development Initiative, which used the Section 108 loan program to leverage the CDBG funds. Back then, we started empowerment zones, which was President Clinton's idea, which was fascinating. I mean, you couldn't have designed a more interesting laboratory, because empowerment zones were geographic, targeted, tax incentive-based programs all across the country, and that we worked with extensively for a period of years. And it really gave an opportunity to see what works, what doesn't work, the different regions of the country, what works in some regions, what doesn't work in other regions, what works in an older city, what works in a newer suburb. So it was a fascinating experience. We did something called the Places Left Behind initiative, which President Clinton wanted to do also, which was, how do you bring businesses to the places in the country that were, quote unquote, left behind because they have the highest poverty rate, highest unemployment rate. So God bless the president. He put the top CEOs on Air Force One and flew around the country. And we went from place to place with the CEOs. But these were places that were left behind generationally. Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, what's called the Colonias, the land on the Texas-Mexico border, where a lot of the immigrant farmers live and the migrant streams start, Appalachia, East St. Louis. I mean, really, really difficult areas. And the president's whole point was to talk to the CEOs to find out what it would take for them to move into these zones. What package could you put together to get a company to go in? Suffice it to say, there was no clear answer on what package you could put together. But over the years, you've seen a number of economic development approaches. Some have worked, some have not. One thing I believe is, especially when it comes to this state, these small boutique, half-hearted measures rarely work. You know, unless you have a program that's going to fundamentally change the dynamic and change the economic calculus, don't waste your time and don't waste your money. A lot of the tax credit programs, wage subsidy programs that were incremental in nature, I mean, they gave you the press release value of doing economic development, but frankly, I don't think they made much of a difference at all. We're talking about the upstate economy here, which is much different than the downstate economy. And first, recognizing the difference is important. It's an interesting phenomenon, but we talk about the New York State economy. We talk about the New York State economy, that includes the New York City economy. If you include the New York City economy, it's a totally different picture and different story than the upstate economy. And since, frankly, the New York City economy tends to be dominant in the state, both numerically and in terms of population, that has been the main story when it comes to economic development. And then the upstate economy was sort of a postscript. We're trying to flip that and say directly, the upstate economy is a different situation and a different story, and it needs a different approach. And that's what this proposal does. Let me run through it quickly, and then Bob Megna is going to add some more facts about the cost of the program as we continue to flesh it out. And then we'll have a discussion about it. As I've said from day one, the best thing the governor can do, the best thing the state administration can do is to focus on moving the economy, especially at a time when the national economy is not doing as well as it could be. And that's where we are. So our focus on jobs has been consistent for the past 2.5 years. Upstate New York is an economy in decline, and an economy in decline for a long, long time. We keep talking about this problem like it's new or it's novel. I was in Buffalo last week, and someone said, in Buffalo, we've had a bad 50 years when it comes to the economy. A bad 50 years. Now, that's Western New York, but you have communities that have had 2, 3, 4 generations of decline. This is not a hiccup. You know, this is not about the national economy in the 2006 or 7 drop. This is a fundamental economic problem for the upstate economy. Our approach has been 2 steps. Number one, you have to do something about the perception and the reality of a high-tax, anti-business state. Almost any business person you talk to across the country goes right to the taxes, goes right to the perception. That's why we're hemorrhaging young people. That's why we're hemorrhaging jobs. And we have been for a long period of time. What do you do about it? You change the reality, because it's not just a perception problem, it's a reality problem. And we have been lowering taxes. That's what the property tax cap is all about. Property taxes are the most onerous tax in the state. People think it's the income tax. It's not. It's the property tax, which happens to be more expensive and more burdensome and is more unusual for businesses. They haven't dealt with this before. Middle class tax cut, we cut the tax rate for the middle class. I stress this because nobody believes it. We have the lowest tax rate in 60 years. Middle class defined as up to $300,000. And that's not a gimmick. It's not adjusted for inflation, adjusted for anything. Lowest tax rate in 60 years for the middle class. 2% spending cap for the state, so we've been limiting government spending and been cutting taxes. Step 2 was an affirmative economic development program where we came up with what I believe is an innovative, but it's a much different approach for the state. It focuses on regions, first of all. It puts public-private sector partnerships together. It's looking for the higher ed to drive the job growth, and the regional economic development councils have been the mainstay. When you then look at our whole economic development program, it all builds off that template. The regional economic development councils, SUNY 2020, investing in SUNY in a way it hasn't been invested in before. innovation hotspots, business incubators, New York Open for Business, all on that regional public-private sector partnership, higher ed driven. The approach is working. It's only been 2.5 years. You're not going to change the main trajectory. You're especially not going to change it when you have the national economy that you're fighting. But the news has been good. Anecdotally, the news has been good. There's a different feel in the state. It's more positive. The unemployment number went down. Our last unemployment number, 7.8%, lowest since 2009, which is good news. And virtually all across the state. Now, I don't want to say that's the trend and that's where we're going to go, because this is a herky-jerky economy and nobody really knows where we're going next, but this was good news. Having said that, our approach we have to bring to critical mass, and we have to do it now. We have to take all these pieces and all these components, which are right, but we have to bring it up to scale, because we're dealing with a massive problem when we're talking about the upstate economy, and it is going to take a massive solution. You are not going to do this with a program or approach that just affects the issue on the margins. You have a worse problem than a marginal approach is going to change. And I apologize for being stark and blunt, but denial is normally the first problem, right? Denial of a problem. You can never solve a problem that you're unwilling to admit. We have a major economic problem in upstate New York, and we have to go right at it. The perception is New York is a high-tax state. That's the perception. That's the reality. Let's shatter it once and for all, and which is what I believe we're going to do with this New York tax-free program. It creates 100% tax-free communities all across the state, primarily in upstate New York. New York tax-free is built on the following facts/premises. Number one, you look where the economy is growing. It's growing from higher ed. That's where it's growing in this state. That's where it's growing across this country. That's where it's growing across the nation. That's where the patents are coming. That's where the copyright is coming. That's what's driving the regional growth. Second fact, there's a positive synergy between academia and entrepreneurial activity. This is not 20 years ago where you were a college president and therefore you didn't have to deal with business, or you were a businessman and therefore you didn't have to know anything about academics, right? The ivory tower is gone. The connection between academia and entrepreneurialism actually makes both better, right? So there's a positive synergy. Universities get it. The leading universities certainly get it. Next fact, New York State has a great asset in our higher education facilities. We have some of the best schools in the nation, a great public system, and a great private system. Fact, we have great schools, we have great talent, we are generating jobs. It's happening. We're birthing jobs. But 75% of the new startup companies leave by the end of the first year. Why? Because we have the initial combination of the university and the talent, and we have the spark, and the job is created, and the business is created, but then an investor comes and will take them to a different state because the investor wants to start a company in a more tax-friendly state. They'll pick them up, they'll bring them to Florida, they'll bring them to the Carolinas, or just our reputation for being anti-business. The young entrepreneurs say, before we really get going, let's move. If we could just keep the jobs we create, we would be in a phenomenally different place in this state. Fact that businesses are attracted to lower taxed communities. You know it, I know it, it's been reinforced for me every day. And fact, the number one reason why businesses say they are leaving this state or they won't come is because of our taxes. That is the number one reason over and over and over again. Upstate economy is different than downstate and has suffered for a long period of time. Not only is upstate not doing well compared to New York City, it's not doing well compared to the rest of the nation. And that's the real tragic news. You know, it's not that New York City, Manhattan is a juggernaut and upstate New York is just losing to the juggernaut. Upstate New York is losing nationwide. And that's, the numbers are really damning. Upstate New York, 5%, while the nation grew at 9%, almost half. Where does this lead you? The sweet spot, the target sweet spot, is where entrepreneurialism meets academia, meets in a regional economy context, in a tax-free environment that is located in upstate New York. If you could list all the factors you're looking for, that's what it is. That would take you to setting up tax-free communities in the upstate economy that promote entrepreneurship and job creation. Tax-free meaning what? Is it a political slogan? No. Tax-free meaning really, really tax-free. I mean no taxes. I mean no business, no sales, no property, no franchise, no income tax. So when a company says to you, well, you know, I'm thinking of going to a no-tax state of Florida, Texas, but you can't have a state that has a better tax situation than our state in a tax-free community, period. There is no state that can say to you, they're going to give you a better tax environment than New York, because we are at zero, and you can't go lower than zero. And until you come up with a state that's handing you a check for cash below your tax rate, we have as competitive an environment as anyone. We propose using the SUNY system as a framework for these entrepreneurial communities upstate. Community means the SUNY campus and 200,000 square feet adjoining a SUNY campus. 200,000 square feet could be up to 1 mile from the SUNY campus. ESDC, which is going to be running the program, Empire State Development Corporation, can give a business or a SUNY a waiver to be located beyond the 1 mile from the SUNY campus. Any projects on the campuses will be reviewed and approved by SUNY and ESDC, so they'll both be administering the programs. Plans are subject to disapproval by ESDC if they don't meet program requirements. For the private colleges, we have a pool of 3 million square feet of tax-free space that the private colleges can compete for. All independent colleges will be eligible, but the property must be located north of Westchester, right? The emphasis here is upstate New York. A Manhattan-based college says, I want to be part of this. Fine. And they have a partner startup company. Fine. But the company can't be located in Manhattan next to the campus. The company has to be located north of Westchester. You can have the same alliance, the same synergy, but we want the businesses and the jobs in upstate New York. That's why we're willing to provide these tax incentives. We don't have to provide this tax treatment to be in Manhattan. We have to provide it to be north of Westchester. The selection among the private colleges is made by a board that we're going to put together. We'll have a 3-member board. Governor appoints one, the Senate appoints one, the Assembly appoints one. The 3-member board will pick the best applications from the private schools. Business to be eligible must create new jobs. This is keep our startup companies, and this is about businesses out of state. This is not about transferring jobs. It's about new jobs. We'll also make eligible startups that are hatched from a New York State incubator will be eligible to move into a tax-free community. There are currently about 45 incubators operating within the state. Businesses that are in the incubators will all be eligible to move into the tax-free community. There'll be strategically located sites, about 20 strategically located state-owned sites, which will also be made zones. These strategically located sites, quote unquote, could be state-owned property, could be former state facilities, former prison, former juvenile home that we're looking to repurpose and we can make them tax-free areas also. When you add up all the eligible space, it adds up to 120 million square feet. What does that mean, 120 million square feet? Is that a lot or is that a little? It means the eligible space is larger than the commercial space that is in San Francisco and Philadelphia combined. It's more space than the commercial space in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse combined. So this is not a small approach. This is a game changer in that the area is so large, it can transform the dynamic of the upstate economy rather than have the stagnation of the upstate economy slow the dynamic, right? There's a theory of critical mass in economic development, that you either change the dynamic or the dynamic changes you. Our problem is of such a scope that if we don't go in with a base that is large enough, I think it's doomed to fail. And this goes in with that kind of dynamic. When you use the SUNY system, you get all the intelligence of the original design of the SUNY system that we forget about. It is so centrally located that 93% of the people in the state live within 15 miles of a SUNY campus, 97% within 20 miles. If you took the North Country out, with all due respect, Gary, it'd be a lot, that number would change dramatically. Yeah. It also learns the lessons from the past. There have been many economic development programs. I ran many at HUD. The state has run many. Constant question is are you being defrauded in the program? I've used all sorts of anti-fraud mechanisms. The one I find most productive is the simplest. Businesses certify that they are actually doing what they say they are doing, and that they are actually following the rules. And this is a tax certification. And if you lie on a tax certification, that's called a crime. And that's why people don't lie on their taxes, because they're honest and they're nice. Also because they don't want to be guilty of a felony or perjury on a state certification. And simplest can be the best. These are certifications. You sign the certifications. It's a tax submission, a tax certification. If you lied, it's a crime. We'll also include all the lessons we learned from the Empire Zones program, the Empowerment Zone programs during the Clinton administration, anti-shortchanger provisions, no self-dealing, clawback of benefits in cases of fraud. It builds on everything that we are currently doing. It just provides a better template for all the programs that we now have working. An incubator in a tax-free zone, venture capital fund investment in a tax-free zone. So it brings it all together. It takes SUNY, which in a great historic twist, Governor Rockefeller used to talk about how SUNY was the great gift to upstate when he was doing the construction that he was doing. Downstate, they built the World Trade Centers, they built a lot of facilities, downstate, airports, et cetera, but upstate New York had SUNY. So it takes what made upstate great, that SUNY system, and it reinvests in the SUNY system going forward. This would be a major change for the state. It would be a major change for the economy. Change is hard, by and large. Change is frightening, and change is threatening. And change brings out a lot of critics and commentators on the risk of change. But this is a state that was born from big ideas and was born from change. And if we want to have an upstate New York that is economically viable 5, 10 years down the road, then we're going to need a big change. Because when you look at the numbers for upstate New York, and you look at that population loss, you factor out that line, it goes to a very bad place very quickly. So we are going to need a major shift. If you have a zero tax environment, and you are in the state of New York, you can sell that combination all day long. All day long. The greatest state in the nation and no taxes. That is a proposition that will sell itself, frankly. And it'll take everything we're now fighting and flip it. New York, the high-tax state. No, no, no. New York, the state with zero tax communities. New York, the anti-business state. No, no. New York State, the state with the most creative economic development, business development program in the nation right now. And I believe it works, and I believe it sells itself. The criticism you will hear, especially in this town, because they live on criticism, well, better than creating a tax-free community, we should do broad-based tax relief for everyone. Everyone should pay less taxes than just targeted areas. Yes, absolutely, that is true. And we're trying to do that, and we have done it, reduce taxes for everyone. I get it. Only trick when it comes to reducing taxes for everyone, you had to find the revenue somewhere to reduce the taxes for everyone. And then you get into that great game, well, where do we cut the budget? Don't cut this, don't cut this, don't cut this, don't cut this. So really they have you in that sort of circular mouse wheel where nobody will agree to any cuts, but everybody wants to reduce taxes. And again, having said that, we have reduced taxes. We will reduce taxes even more. But think about this. To reduce the state income tax, broad-based, 1 point, costs about $6 billion. $6 billion is all the money in the world to me. Past 3 budgets, we start with a multi-billion-dollar deficit. We've never had $6 billion to spend on that kind of discretionary basis, ever. Even if somehow you had $6 billion and you could cut taxes 1 point, and you went from 7 to 6, depending on the bracket, you're still at 6. And upstate New York can't compete at 6. By the way, upstate New York can't compete at 5. By the way, upstate New York can't compete at 4. Because you're competing against states that say 0. 0 is the number. And they're newer states, and they're states that they argue have a better climate and advantages. So it's not going to be about changing the dynamic with broad-based tax reductions. Even though we have to do it anyway, it's not going to work for upstate New York. One of the reasons I think the suggestion is made, this benefit is primarily for upstate New York. If you reduce taxes on a broad basis, the benefit is primarily to New York City, because that's where most of the taxpayers live, is in New York City. So you'll see the New York City-based commentators say, no, it's better to cut the broad-based taxes. Yes, because more of the funding goes to New York City. I know that. But this is about helping upstate. This is not about helping New York City economically. We have a lot of things that are working for downstate. We have a lot of programs, and this state has had a long history of doing a lot of good things for downstate. This is about helping the upstate economy and helping it at a critical time. And in truth, I don't think the upstate economy has gotten the kind of concern that it's deserved over the years. And it's not helping upstate at the cost of helping downstate, because the state is still one account at the end of the day, right? It's one ledger. And if upstate New York is not economically viable, downstate New York is going to pay the cost. It's actually more advantageous for downstate New York to invest in upstate, because the stronger the upstate is, the less they have to subsidize. So it works out for all at the end of the day. The other issue that we're going to have to deal with is, this is upstate New York. It means we're going to have to attract the attention of the downstate legislators, because you still need to get to 51 to pass a bill in the Senate and the Assembly. And to get to 51 to pass a bill, you're going to need a downstate population that doesn't see the immediate attraction of this proposal to them in their home district on a parochial basis. Again, the argument is this is good for downstate because of the one balance sheet argument, but that's an argument that we're going to have to make because there's not a natural political support from downstate for this proposal. Having said that, we have plenty of time on the clock. We can organize, we can mobilize, make our voice heard, and I think we can get it done, and I think we can get it done this year, and I think it would be the greatest cause for hope and the greatest chance for a dynamic changer that the upstate economy has seen in modern political history. Because, my friends, you can't do more than this. You can't do more than this. No taxes. No taxes. For 10 years. You can't say more than that as a community. With that, let me turn it over to Mr. Robert Megna, Budget Director Extraordinaire, has masterminded the last 3 budgets, closed deficits, found revenues, and the numbers always balance, or so he tells me. Robert Megna.
Thank you, Governor. It takes me a second to, it may take me a second or two to recover. My heart skips a few beats whenever I hear we might lose $6 billion, which I think gets to the Governor's point about this program and what this program is all about. You know, what is the cost to the state budget of this program? And I think there's some misinterpretation out there about what this program will cost the state budget. The answer is no cost. And from my point of view, that makes it an ideal program, but I think it gets to a lot of the points the Governor was making. Why is that the case? Well, it's the case because, as the Governor stated, unlike other programs that we've learned from, like Empire Zones, where the state actually reimbursed localities for property tax and where there were upfront grants paid and where we were making refundable payments to companies, this program is basically on tax-free land, so there's no property tax issue. There are no upfront grants, so there is no cost, there is no expenditure out of the state budget on this program. Moreover, as the Governor again emphasized, and I think it's important to repeat, especially with the emphasis on upstate, that these are net new jobs, and they would not have been created in New York without the program. So again, we're talking about new businesses and new jobs in upstate New York, which again gets to the Governor's point, an area that really hasn't been growing in any case. So any net new growth we have is a benefit to the state. And we do budget on a projected growth basis, and we anticipate in the future, as this program is put in, that we, will lose some of that projected revenue growth maybe in the future. But again, we have to assess how this program works. We have to assess the fact that upstate New York has not been growing, so job growth in New York would be net new to our projections, since most of those projections of growth are for downstate New York. And so that's how we're addressing the cost to this program to the budget. There is no cost to the budget. And with that, I'll go back to the tax-free logo, and we can move to the next piece.
That's why Bob likes it, because there's no cost. Bob is a very predictable fellow. If something has no cost, he likes it automatically. He's also predictable in the more something costs, the less he likes it. With that, let's turn it over to Brian McMahon from the New York State Economic Development Council for his comments. Thank you for being here, Brian.
All right. Thank you, Governor. And thank you for inviting me to speak today. I've worked in economic development for much of my career, and tax-free New York is good news for economic development. It has grabbed the attention and the support of many corporate leaders throughout the state and therefore throughout the country. The initiative will encourage university and corporate R&D partnerships. It will enhance innovation and startups and will lead to new advanced manufacturing facilities in our communities. These are the high-tech, high-value jobs every region of the state wants to attract. And by leveraging one of New York's greatest economic assets, its colleges and universities, Tax-Free New York will accelerate tech-led economic development and give New York a competitive advantage in attracting R&D investment and jobs in advanced manufacturing. It is one thing to cut taxes for business. It is another to say no taxes, no kidding. For decades, upstate New York communities have watched as businesses, families, and our young people have left, and the reality is upstate New York's economy has for years not received the attention it truly needs from Albany. Governor Cuomo has had a sharp focus on building upstate, and the Tax-Free New York proposal is yet another example of his commitment to helping rebuild our communities. The governor has recognized that a new comprehensive action plan is needed to get the upstate economy back on track, and Tax-Free New York is an important part of this plan. It's a bold idea. It's never been done before on this scale, and I'm confident it will yield results for struggling communities across upstate New York. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Now from Gary Douglas, who's the President and CEO of the Plattsburgh North Country Chamber of Commerce.
All I can say is, wow, I'm not going to quote Teddy Roosevelt today. I have to save some of those quotes for the future, but I know TR would be proud. He believed in bold action, seizing the moment, and again, you're seizing the moment. We, in the economic development world, you keep giving us what we ask for, and we have to keep going back and find new things to ask for, and we will. But we're on an entirely different trajectory in this state, thanks to the step-by-step connecting the dots approach that you've been taking that I think everybody needs to understand. You got that, job one was to start the long process of reforming and reducing the cost of doing business in this state. And it's easy to forget how far we've come in just 2 years on that front, with more to do. And you're continuing to work with us to identify the next steps, even in the current session. And then to change the way that economic development is done. Again, letting us do it on a region-by-region basis. We happen to think in the North Country that's working out pretty well. And this is the next step. In fact, this not only activates what you've been talking about and what others have been talking about of the increasing need to wed the academic and business worlds and to create the jobs of this new century, but it wouldn't be possible to do it as effectively as is now going to happen, I'm convinced, if we hadn't done the regional council process first. That put the plans in place, it put the regional collaborations in place. It won't surprise you that we had a meeting at the chamber at 10 o'clock this morning with the president of SUNY Plattsburgh, the president of Clinton Community College, the Development Corporation of Clinton County. We're already with excitement conceptualizing how this might all work together and how we might link with Clarkson and how we might link with the innovation hotspot process that we're talking about and connecting those dots together. But you don't get to do that other in a dreamy kind of way without a governor putting forward the kinds of tools to not only make that possible, but to incentivize all of us to keep thinking and keep strategizing and keep building. So we're excited. This is, I've got 19 Quebec companies from the Quebec City area in Plattsburgh all day today, who we arranged to come down and consider doing business in New York, and obviously in the North Country if they consider New York. What a powerful tool this will be in messaging to those kinds of companies that we have the opportunity to attract from Canada, as they also look at our neighboring states, and they listen to Vermont, the governor of Maine, and others talking to them, but also places like Florida and Texas. This will be powerful. It will make jobs happen in our area. It will fit our existing strategies. It will reinforce our regional process. And thank you. Let's get it done.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. When I was talking about the federal experience, it was 8 years. And you could see the process mature and develop over the 8 years. Because what you're really trying to do is so dramatic. We're organized in a structure that just doesn't work anymore. We have county lines, we have town lines, we have village lines, city lines. It just doesn't work. And you're trying to forge relationships that don't exist. Mm-hmm. So you say we should be a region. Yeah, I know, except we're not. We're not a region. We're a county. I'm a city. We're a town. You're in a different county. I know, but you have to change all that and relate as a region. The government, public-private sector partnership. Yeah, but we're not. one doesn't really like the other, you know. Government and business, there's just a different philosophy. I know, but we have to make that work, and now we have to bring the higher ed in as the engine. So these are all big evolutionary steps. And in some ways, you have to start at the first but it has only been 2 years, and the progress has been remarkable.
It's amazing.
Your progress has certainly been remarkable. You know, the other thing you see with the Regional Economic Development Councils, you see stronger and, let's say, less strong. Same thing with empowerment zones over those 8 years. Some places it just works faster, better, for any set of reasons. North Country, which I can say this now, when they started, the region was probably one of the most fractured regions because it is a big region, the North Country, and they didn't think of themselves as one region. They were on the east side, they were on the west side, they were on the north side, a lot of miles, but they have forged a really united effort that has been breathtaking to watch.
Because you gave us the opportunity, so thank you for that.
No, my pleasure. Thank you. We'll next hear from Barbara Ann Hegan from Otsego County. Thank you for being here, Barbara Ann.
Thank you, Governor. It is no secret that New York State's higher education and institutions are among the best in the world as hubs of intellect, innovation, and workforce training. And I can speak firsthand as I am a proud graduate of SUNY Oneonta. The partnerships between private industries and state universities serve as a model that bring together innovation and research with business startups and entrepreneurialism. For too many years, upstate New York's economy has declined, and our state government has not done what it is needed to stop job loss and to stop the flight of young people and businesses. Governor Cuomo's tax-free New York proposal clearly proves that Albany is focused on rebuilding upstate New York's economy like never before. But our local economy must be built more than just universities. Chambers of commerce across the state should seize this opportunity to partner with our world-class institutions. That collaboration will turn our economy around and breathe new life into our upstate cities. I believe that tax-free New York will put Otsego County on the map. People will know us as a business innovation education hub where students, entrepreneurs, investors, and our residents partner together and by doing so, help fuel our region and state's economy. And I can tell you without a doubt that this is the most business-friendly state government in recent history. Today's announcement is yet another example of how Governor Cuomo listened to us, worked with us, and is now giving us what we need to attract and grow our businesses, create jobs, and keep jobs here in New York. Thank you, Governor Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara, and thank you for being here. Last but certainly not least, President of the Rockland Business Association, Mr. Al Samuels.
Thank you, Governor. Something Barbara Ann said reminded me that I'm a product of what was then known as Rockport State Teachers College. And what a transformation has occurred in the network of teachers' colleges that I was familiar with back in the day, and what the SUNY campuses have matured into. We went to classes in Quonset huts that we used in World War II. And now we have one of the finest, I believe, in the country, state university system. And the opportunity that this initiative brings to those campuses is kind of gratifying to somebody who is a product of the original SUNY system. And I believe the motto was, let each become all that he is capable of being. And this is an extension of that, and you're making that possible, sir. For us in the Hudson Valley, the past 28 months has been a truly exciting time because we have followed the lead of my esteemed colleague from the North Country, and we have looked at the way they have molded their community. And we took a look at, by the way, you owe me for that, Gary. We took a look at the diversity in our community. We have Westchester County in the southeastern portion of it, and we have Sullivan County, and you couldn't ask for two more diverse counties. But the Regional Economic Development Councils gave us an opportunity to forge relationships that did not exist. In December, we were awarded an almost $93 million amount of money to fund 84 projects. And you also gave us, after over a decade of fighting for it, the reality of a new Tappan Zee Bridge, which is a major addition, not just for the counties of Westchester and Rockland, where it has landfall, but for the entire Hudson Valley and therefore for the state of New York. And we have already seen real results. We have seen companies that are leasing space. We have a member company in the RBA, an automobile dealership that sold 36 trucks to Tappan Zee Constructors and took an order for 30 more. This is real economic progress, and it's been visionary. This administration has provided vision. On my website already, you can see that we have put down that the Tax-Free New York initiative is big, it's bold, it's visionary. You have indicated in your presentation today that there are people who, perhaps resist big, bold, and visionary. They're a little intimidated by it. We welcome it. We embrace it. We thank you for it. We can see ramifications on our main streets, the downtowns. Downtown villages and main streets in the downtowns cannot survive unless our communities have substantive businesses with jobs that will pay people the wages they need to live in our communities and therefore have the income to spend downtown. So this isn't just a statewide initiative. To me, this is a Main Street initiative, as well. And I cannot thank you enough for the friendship that you have shown to those of us in this room who are basically your troops in the trenches. Your partnership with us, your willingness to work with us, the opportunities that you provided. I think I speak for all of my colleagues. We are very grateful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do. With that, the floor is open. Questions, comments? Don't be shy. Kevin, you're not shy.
He's not shy.
He's not shy. Kevin Law is not shy.
Never shy. Thank you, Governor. As you know, I wear a couple of hats. Both I run the Long Island Association. I'm the chairman of Stony Brook University, and as well as, thanks to you, the co-chair of the Long Island Regional Economic Development Council. And it's not one of those cases where I stand depends upon where I sit. It's wherever I sit, this is good news, and from all those places. And it's very consistent with what we're trying to do with Accelerate Long Island, where we're trying to take the research that's being conducted in our academic institutions and convert that research into commerce. And I think your plan will help accelerate New York. And one of the things I try to do on the island, we live in the shadow of New York City, and sometimes it's us versus them. And when I try to say, no, when things are going well in New York City, that's good for Long Island. And likewise, your initiatives, whether it's the Tax-Free New York initiative, your tourism summit, your efforts with casino gambling and beer and yogurt, whatever it is, that's great for upstate. And downstaters, being one of them, we should support those efforts because we're one state at the end of the day, and what's good for upstate New York is good for downstate as well. So I thank you for your efforts.
Exactly right. Thank you for what you do, Kevin. Thank you.
Governor, as you know, New York Best, the Battery Energy Storage Technology Consortium, is working to grow the energy storage industry in New York State, transforming two of the largest industries on the planet, the automotive sector and the electric grid sector. And of the over 120 members of New York Best, many are startups. They come out of our universities. We have almost every major university as members also. I think it's very important that you recognize this very powerful link between technology and job creation, not just for R&D, but for manufacturing as well. The reason why GE cited their battery center, their battery plant in Schenectady was to be near technology, to be near their own technology, to be near the universities. So I believe this is a very important program. I think it will benefit greatly the members of our organization. And I recently had the opportunity to be out and talking to many, many companies in the world that are in the energy storage industry who want to work with New York universities. And I think the tone of those conversations is starting to change. It's changing from having an R&D project with the university to having partnerships and looking at New York State, looking at the commercialization center we're setting up in Rochester. So I applaud this effort.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Governor. Mark Egan from the Albany Colony Regional Chamber. First of all, commend you and your team for continuing to seek ways to make New York more competitive. One of the questions that I've received is about the 10-year window. Will it be a sort of a phase-in during the 10 years, or will it be totally tax-free and then they'll pay the full load, or is it going to be a phase-in?
It is totally tax-free for 10 years for all the taxes. The income tax is totally tax-free for 5. Then it's a $200,000 cap for the next 5. Tax-free up to 200, taxed over 200.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I had a question.
Steve?
Governor, Steve DeMille, Mohawk Valley Edge, and I'm also on the Mohawk Valley Regional Economic Development Council. And as you know, one of our projects has been the development of the Marcy Nano Center at SUNY IT site, which we've been spending a lot of time trying to leverage all the successful investments that have been made here in the capital investment. And there's a lot of good things that are happening on that site, and a lot of good prospects coming down the road. I think this piece of legislation, though, really fills a big void. It does provide not only the comfort to the tech sector in particular, that New York State is a place to invest. The tech sector, obviously, the number one thing they're most interested in, besides obviously having a favorable business climate, is they want to have a location in which they can attract talent to support the investment they're making. And New York State has a great reputation of producing talent. I have met with a number of companies across the globe, and invariably they have benefited from the exporting of New York State talent. But the thing they really want to know is that if they invest in New York State, is New York State a place that has the ability to attract the talent? And this particular legislation does provide, I think it's the game changer, and I think it does level the playing field, and it puts New York State in a position where it can really take advantage of all the other attributes we have that make this a very attractive place for businesses to invest.
Thank you, Steve. I agree.
Governor Peter Ost, Adirondack Regional Chamber of Commerce, and first let me say, I hope you've been practicing your paddling skills. You'll be joining us here in July.
Well, yeah, I had a choice between practicing my paddling skills and finding a better judge. I'm looking for a better judge on the competition. We have the Adirondack Challenge is coming up, for those of you who haven't heard. Part of what we talked about this in the State of the State back in January. Part of what we're trying to do is generate more tourism in upstate New York, and we have so many treasures that people just don't know about. The Adirondacks are at the top of that list. So we're going to have a river rafting race challenge. I challenge the State Senate and the State Assembly to both put together a team, and we're going to have a competition. Big stakes, pride, reputational, possible monetary awards at the end of the raft. So this is going to be we cannot lose this competition, by the way, just so we're all clear. I'm sorry?
I've already put my money on you guys. But first let me say and applaud you for one thing that I heard in this messaging here today, and that is that not only did you recognize, but you publicly acknowledge something that we in Upstate have been challenged with for years, is recognizing and acknowledging that there is a difference between downstate economy and the upstate economy. And publicly making that a center point of this message, I think, makes such sense for all of us as we try to move this legislation forward, because there is a strong difference between both of those economies. And then also, something that I've lived by and shared with my constituency and my membership at our chamber is this slogan that I've used is, make no little plans, for there is no magic in them to stir men's souls. And that was a quote from D.H. Burnham when they were building the Chicago World's Fair in the late 1800s. And this is exactly the type of bold initiative that we need to change the dynamic, shift that paradigm for the upstate economy. So I applaud you for that, and we look forward to working with you as we move this forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Well said.
I'm Mike Tucker with the Center for Economic Growth here in the Capital Region, Governor, and the opportunity to bring together entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, educators, using facilities of our higher education institutions, both at the world-class SUNY and private institutions of higher education throughout the state, will certainly help to supercharge the upstate economy and benefit all of New York. But most importantly, it will send a message, both nationally and globally, to technology companies throughout about the great opportunities that there will be here in New York, and it sends a strong message that the new New York is truly open for business. We work very closely with Empire State Development and our partners around the state to market the state under the New York Loves Nano, New York Loves Clean Tech, New York Loves Bio umbrella, and having the opportunity to take this message to trade shows and industry organizations, not only throughout the United States, but throughout the world, is really a strong message that will go far beyond the benefits that this program will bring. It will also enable us to work more closely with our colleges and universities through Empire State Development's NYSTAR Manufacturers Extension Program through the Regional Technology Development Centers, helping to bridge the gap between technology and manufacturing and academia to promote commercialization. So this is a strong program not only for our manufacturing, existing manufacturing, but new companies who will be startup entrepreneurs, as well as companies we can attract from outside the state. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I think you're right. I also think, it's a simple program and it's a clean program. Businesses are very skeptical about becoming entangled with government, and we used to run these programs. You get a wage credit, but the person can only make $36,000 and has to be 5'10", and you can't work evenings, And business said, look, I have to run my business. I can't run it to fit some government program that's going to change every time they elect somebody new. This is nice and simple. You qualify initially for eligibility in that area, and it's over, period. Can't be simpler. You don't have to comply with any regulations, so it's, and that's one of the things I've heard over and over and over. I'm not going to run my business pursuant to some government program design. Let me run my business my way, and this will.
Linda Hillman, the Rutherford County Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm also on the regional council here, and we've enjoyed working as a team too, as the other regions have. I have a question. As the tax-free zones will become very popular, a lot of people will move in there, the businesses will grow. How will the costs be offset for some of the services such as fire and police and things like that, if there's no cost, as Robert said?
Well, there won't be cost, they won't be paying taxes if they are on campus, right? Because right now the campus doesn't pay property tax, the state university system doesn't pay. If they are off-site on the 200,000 square foot adjoining up to a mile, or ESDC can give a waiver beyond the mile, then it would either be, property taxes would be through a pilot, or just a private parcel that is privately acquired where they would actually pay the property taxes. Moreover, for most of these communities, yes, the person won't be paying income tax to the state, generally. But this is all about just generating more economic activity. If you get people moving in instead of moving out, that is a good thing. You get people moving in who have a job, who are making money, who buy a house with a real estate broker, who gets a commission, who pays income tax, who goes to a store and buys groceries, who puts their kid in school and buys clothes. That's what this is all about, generating the economic activity in communities that have seen a decline for the past 20, 30 years, and increasing government costs, and fewer people paying a higher and higher cost of government. And it's the juxtaposition of those two lines that's a death sentence for upstate New York. So this is about changing the exodus, getting more people in, more economic activity, but specifically, if you're off-site, it's either a pilot or a property tax.
Governor Nicole from Columbia County Chamber of Commerce in Hudson, New York. For several times over the years, our local prison has been slated for possible closure, and it's something that the people have fought against. I'm just wondering if there would be an opportunity in creating efficiencies in the prison system if some of the prisons are not needed. It seems like an ideal opportunity to possibly take some properties like that. Our community college for Columbia and Greene counties is really, there's not a lot of room there, and Robert was there just the other day. But we have some prime real estate with our prison, and the state has talked about closing it, and quite frankly, many entities locally, including the Chamber of Commerce, have fought against that because it does mean jobs, but I think there's a really unique opportunity here to possibly use land. There's a very nice campus that the prison sits on, so I'm just asking if it might be a possibility to look at some of those
Totally,
properties.
David, totally. You know, when it comes to state prisons, one of the greatest economic development programs for upstate New York over the past 30 years has been prison siting, believe it or not, as perverse as that sounds. But the prisons have been very important to communities economically. We now need fewer prisons. That's a good thing. Demographically, the numbers have changed, so we can close prisons. Communities now don't want you to close the prison because they don't want to lose the jobs and the economic activity of the prison. I mean, that's the situation that they're in. Not that a prison is a great economic generator, but it's actually better than any realistically hoped for replacement. I mean, think about what they're saying. I'd rather you keep a prison. So now, we have been closing prisons. When you close a prison, it becomes a very difficult building for quote-unquote reuse. And this, I think, when we talk about the strategically located programs, those 20 slots, a closed prison facility where we have transitional relocation grants and it's going to be a tax-free community, that's something you can actually sell. So I think it's perfect for it.
Governor John D'Ambrosio from the Orange County Chamber of Commerce. Kind of a practical question. I think most of us in this room think that this is a great program, and it is a great program. I don't think that some of our developers are going to think it's a great program if they're not kind of within the confines of the geographic territory, as well as some private landowners. How would you answer them if you were us? Because we're the people on the street who have to answer those kinds of questions.
It can only be good. I would say to the developer, it can only be good. It can only be better for you than it is now. First, on these, if there's a new business located on a campus, maybe it's in an existing building, or maybe they're going to build on the campus, that's construction. If they're acquiring land on the adjoining site, that's construction. But more than just the business, remember, it's the economic spin-off is what this is all about. You're a home builder, these people are going to need homes. You're a renovation contractor, these people are going to be buying houses that need renovation. So this is all about changing the trajectory of the exodus and generating more economic opportunity. Really, it's all at the cost of the state when you think about it. Because the main incentive is no income tax, no business tax. The state was getting, that was state money anyway. You know, it may cost the locality something on the margins, but really it's the state that's foregoing the revenue for the economic activity in the locality. And it can only be good. Okay. Any questions from the press?
Because the legislative session has been so strained by a lot of people's standards, there's some that believe that some of the basic items won't get done this year, campaign finance, or at least public finance, elections in mind. And it's pretty interesting that you're pivoting hard to this initiative, which is a little less controversial, not to get done to show the government's still working. Is there any truth in that?
No. Yes. I've learned after 2 years. Just yes and just no. The less you say, the better. First, Mr. Fink, this has been a strange legislative session. That would suggest, that the other legislative sessions were normal, right? Which I would debate your definition of normalcy. Second, this is probably in some ways the boldest and most provocative proposal that needs to be considered in the next few weeks. This is not a proposal that is a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination. So by your theory, or the suggested theory, I think this is the exact opposite. We have a very robust agenda to begin with, women's equality agenda, the reform agenda, the distressed cities, casinos. It was robust to begin with. We're adding now an additional very aggressive piece on top of it. My reasoning is sort of the opposite of what you suggest. I was saying yesterday that I think the legislature can actually use, to the extent that there's been negative publicity about certain members of the legislature over the past year, and the legislature wants to say, that's not us, it doesn't represent who we really are. Great. Have a gangbuster, great legislative session where you just hit the ball out of the park and you get more work done than this state legislature has done in 50 years. That would be my answer. So I hope they go at this whole agenda and they go at it aggressively. But this proposal is as sweeping and broad as any proposal that is on the table already.
And just to follow up on that, you mentioned that needing the help of some of the outstate legislators for support. I just wanted to clear up, is New York City included in all, in other words, the outer boroughs, the Bronx, for example?
Yes, there are about 8 zones downstate. Not Manhattan. Now, the schools in Manhattan can participate, but the participation would be in a community located north of Westchester.
Governor, on the private school selection, can you explain the reasoning behind the 3-person board appointed by you, the Senate, and the Assembly? And with that, are you concerned at all about politics, especially given that the legislative leaders are from downstate?
No, I'm a member of the board also, and we needed some vehicle to select the best applications from the private colleges. So it's our way of saying we'll do it together.
But why would the government leaders be the right people to choose those? I mean, what is the legislature's role in that?
The legislature represents districts, and they have knowledge of the local communities and what schools actually were serving what communities and what communities need the help.
Governor, do you think it's fair to infer, I guess, that the legislature is not enthusiastic about this proposal? This is, I think, the 3rd event like this you've had in a week in Albany, and what kind of reaction are you getting from the legislature?
Enthusiasm. That's my answer, and I'm sticking with it.
Robust enthusiasm.
No, it's that this proposal, we have been talking about many of the other proposals for months, right? And everyone understands the basic parameters of the other proposals, right? We've been talking about casinos ad nauseum for years, actually. We've been talking about casinos. We've been talking about the women's equality agenda, some of those items for years, the controversial ones for years, the reform agenda, et cetera. This is a relatively latecomer to the discussion, and it is a sweeping, provocative proposal that I want to air, and I want to vet, and I want to develop support for in a short period of time. Hence, I'm going to spend more time discussing it.
Governor, should they not show that enthusiasm further down into June, would you consider keeping the legislature past June 20th in order to pass tax-free or any of the other proposals that you're backing right now?
I'm not even contemplating that possibility. I'm optimistic that we're going to get done what we have to get done on time.
And why did you propose tax-free earlier in the year? Why didn't you include it in your State of the State agenda?
Because We had been talking about it for a very long period of time, but we wanted to study it. We wanted to make sure we understood all the ramifications and the consequences of it, and that we had it right. So maybe we spent a little bit more time in the kitchen, but we wanted to make sure it was right when we brought it out. And I think it was the right timing at the end of the day anyway, because we have spent a lot of time honing the proposal, and there's more than enough time for the legislature to consider it and pass it if they so choose. If they don't pass it, it's not because they didn't have the time and we haven't had the discussion and the exploration. It's because they don't want to pass it. From a timing point of view, I think it's worked fine.
Governor, the State Assembly today is taking action on another one of your agenda items, the decriminalization of small amounts of marijuana. Have you had any discussions with the Senate on that, and do you have any indication whether that's going to move this year?
It is one of the issues, Glenn, that we need. There are always two issues. One, can you get an item, what they said, put on the floor so there'll actually be a vote? And second, if they are going to put it on the floor, do you have the votes, right? So that's one of the issues where we're trying to put together the votes. We can get it on the floor, but we have to have the votes to pass it.
There's a bill in the legislature right now to go back to the old levered voting machines for the New York City mayoral primary. What do you think of that idea?
We're studying it, Karen, and I haven't given them my opinion yet. I understand the situation and the conundrum, but I don't have a position yet.
Does it seem like they're going backwards?
Well, I understand. Look, in the ideal world, you would not go back to the lever machines. But if you can't do it as a matter of timing, you still have to count the votes. So.
The tax-free initiative, is that what we plan on discussing with legislative leaders in a leaders meeting later today?
Oh, I can't tell you that. That's top secret. But I'll tell you afterwards. We're down to we will talk about this, but depending on how long the meeting goes, we're down to 5 or so major items. So I don't have, for today, I don't need to specifically focus on any one. And we're down to a number of issues that we can cover almost all of them, because they change, And some of these are, like the question of small amounts of marijuana. Is there support to pass it? And, that can change.
Well, like you have said before with public financing and the abortion piece of the women's agenda, that those are issues that different people have fundamentally different views on, and that at some point you just have to stop because there's nowhere for it to go. So I'm wondering if you've made any progress on those issues, or if you think you're nearing that point.
We're making progress, and the votes are counted when the bell rings, right? So until the bell rings, we're going to keep doing everything we can do to get the votes that we need. If we had the votes that we needed on an issue, you can normally tell because I try to get it passed when we have the votes.
Counting in public financing, is it problematic that two potential yes votes for public financing in the Senate, Malcolm Smith and John Sampson, are facing legal troubles right now, and their attendance might not necessarily be counted on next week?
That, Nick, is an issue that hasn't passed step one, right? Step one was, can you get it on the floor? Step two is, do you have the votes? Public finance is a step one question. Can you get it on the floor? And we haven't crossed that hurdle, so we don't have a hard vote count on public finance. Public finance is also going to depend on what the package is, what else is in that bill.
Governor, your Education Reform Commission met last week. What are you hoping to hear from them? Do you have any ideas yourself as to maybe fix the way that the state education system is right now? New York spends #1 per pupil. Their graduation rates are in the middle of the pack.
It's been everything we've been doing for the past year on the whole education agenda. That's exactly what we've been working on, right? Is the solving the disconnect. Why do you spend more than everyone else and you don't have performance that measures? So that's the teacher evaluation system. That's the better teacher system. That's everything the commission has been working on. It's the whole education policy.
Is there a timetable where you can see plans or results, changes?
This year we got the whole teacher evaluation system implemented. That was the major goal from the first year.
One of the national organization tried to discourage you from endorsing or allowing mixed martial arts. I'm wondering where you stand on it now.
Mixed martial arts, my position is, what are the economic benefits to the state, right? It's not that we can stop mixed martial arts. That is not an option. It's not, do I think it's a brutal sport? Is it more brutal than boxing? Is it more brutal than wrestling? Is it more brutal than rugby? That's not an option. Mixed martial arts is happening. It's on television. It's going to continue to happen. People are going to see it on television if they want to see it on television. Should it happen in the state of New York, my question is, what are the economic benefits to the state of New York? They'll do shows here. I understand that. What does that actually mean for us when they do a show here? And that, depending on the analysis of the economics, that's going to lead my decision more, frankly, than, is it a sport that I would want to participate in or not?
Just follow up, if UFC has been there lobbying, spent a lot of money in lobbying, have they not come to your office to show figures as to what it did bring?
I have not met with them, no.
Have they asked?
I don't know. I have not met with them. Have they asked what? Oh, I don't know.
Following up on that, though, the NOWs in their statement said that mixed martial arts was a sport that tends to encourage violence against women. Do you have any concerns that if it's approved in New York State, it would lead to something like that?
Well, look, I think if to the extent it is a violent sport, which it is a violent sport, boxing is a violent sport. Some people think football is a violent sport. There are a lot of violent sports. To me, the decision is more about the economics and what it would mean for the state.
Entertainment-related question, I guess. Has there been any more movement to adjust the SAFE Act to address some of the questions that were raised about use of these weapons in TV movie productions and things of that nature?
No. No, but I haven't heard anything else about it either. Okay, let me thank you all very much for coming today. Thank you for the discussion on the proposal. As you can tell from the tenor of the questions, it's all about actually getting it passed. And that's going to be to the legislature, the Senate, and the Assembly. And that's going to be an important conversation over the next few weeks. So thank you very much for taking the time to be here today. Thank you.